Hello and welcome back to the Hazzabhajan YouTube channel. It is Harry here, and today it is time for another installment in my football alphabet series. For those who don't know, this is the series where I take a look and profile some of the best clubs and players whose names and surnames respectively begin with a particular letter. And today it is the turn of the best clubs whose names begin with the letter E. If you want to check out any of the other episodes I've done in this series, there'll be a playlist link on the end screen of this video and in the description down below for you to check any of them out, or indeed all of them out if you're very keen. And whilst you're there, of course, please don't forget, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And without any further ado, here is my Hall of Fame of 5 of the best clubs whose names begin with the letter E. Number 1. Everton. Now, I'm not talking about the Everton who play in Chile for this segment, as much as it was very tempting to do so. But of course, the first team in this video is the second best team on Merseyside, Everton FC. They were founded in 1878 by St Domingo's Church Sunday School, changing their name to Everton in 1880 and moving into Anfield in 1884. 4 years later, they were founding members of the Football League, winning it for the first time in 1891, so technically speaking, the league title has gone to Anfield 20 times. However, because of rent increases, they moved into a new stadium called Goodison Park in 1892, leaving Anfield unoccupied, until Everton member John Holding founded Liverpool FC to give the ground an owner. And the rest, as they say, is history. Following the signing of Dixie Dean in 1925, they became a dominant force in the English game, winning a First Division title in 1928, with Dean scoring an English record 60 league goals in one season. Although they were stunningly relegated in 1930 due to internal conflicts, they bounced back immediately and won the First Division in 1932, following that up with an FA Cup triumph in 1933 and the league title again in 1939, meaning that they hold a weird distinction of having won both pre-war league championships, having won the 1914-15 First Division season too. Their second and to date last relegation came in 1951, and they took 3 years to return to the top flight, meaning that they've only missed 4 of the 124 seasons of English top flight football. They won another 2 league titles in the 1960s and 2 more in their second golden age during the late 1980s, although as a result of the nationwide ban on English clubs from competing in European competitions owing to the Hazel disaster, they were denied the chance to compete in the European Cup when they were at the peak of their powers. During the Premier League era, they have been wildly inconsistent, struggling repeatedly during the 1990s and coming close to relegation on a few occasions, before storming back up the table under the guidance of David Moyes and becoming regular features in Europe. Since the Scots' departure though, they've only qualified for Europe twice, and after many years of reckless spending on players who simply didn't work out, they now find themselves in deep trouble, both in terms of league standing and financial fair play. They only survived on the final day of last season thanks to a nervy 1-0 win over Bournemouth, and with a new stadium on the horizon, which they are scheduled to move into next year, they simply cannot afford to suffer what would be just the 3rd relegation in their history. Famous Everton alumni include Gary Lineker, Howard Kendall, the aforementioned Dixie Dean, current Arsenal manager Mikel Arteta, and Neville Southall. Number 2. Espanyol. Forever in the shadow of their Catalan neighbours Barcelona, Espanyol have nonetheless held their own throughout the La Liga era and have been regular competitors in the top flight of Spanish football. Initially known as Sociedad Española upon its foundation in 1900 by an engineering student at the Uni of Barcelona, it changed to Club Espanyol a year later, but financial difficulties meant that they folded in 1906. They relaunched after a merger with the Spanish Jiu-Jitsu club in 1908 and were granted patronage by the Spanish king in 1912, allowing them to sport a crown on their badge and add Real to the start of their name, although they are still commonly known as Espanyol. They won the Campionat de Catalunya 3 times during the 1910s, and upon the creation of a nationwide league in 1928, namely La Liga, they were founding members. They backed up that status by winning their first Copa del Rey title in 1929, one of 4 that they have won in their history, with the most recent coming in 2006. However, in spite of spending 87 seasons in La Liga, they have never won it, having never finished higher than 5th during the 21st century or higher than 3rd ever, making them hold the unwanted distinction of being the team who has spent the most seasons in La Liga without ever winning it. They have suffered 6 relegations in their history, but have bounced back straight away on each occasion, something which bodes relatively well for them given that their 6th relegation from La Liga came just last season. Perhaps the most notable achievements in the club's history came in the UEFA Cup, when they reached the final in 1987-88 and again in 2006-07, although they lost both of them on penalty kicks, the former against Bayer Leverkusen and the latter against UEFA Cup specialists Sevilla. Famous players to have turned out for them include Chelsea manager Mauricio Pochettino, current Villarreal hotshot Gerard Moreno, Spanish goalkeeping legend Ricardo Zamora, former Napoli winner Jose Callejon, and Dani Jarque, whose life was tragically taken from him owing to a cardiac arrest in 2009. Number 3. Estudiantes. Perhaps contrary to my own belief, Estudiantes de La Plata aren't a part of Argentina's Big Five, in spite of them having lifted more Copa Libertadores trophies than 2 of them, but a relative lack of domestic success perhaps makes their status a bit more understandable. They were founded in 1905 after a few Gimnasia de La Plata members, who are now their rivals, broke away from the club, and within 6 years they had earned a place in the Argentine top flight. 2 years on, they would win it for the first time, although it would take another 54 years before they could get their hands on another league crown, and they've only picked up 6 in their entire history, the most recent of which coming in 2010. In the 1950s, following a confrontation with the Peronist government after they refused to distribute Eva Perón's books, their management team was replaced by government officials who deliberately sold all of their good players, leading to a relegation in 1953, although they returned a year later when they were allowed to govern themselves once more. Their golden age came in the late 1960s, when they became the first team outside of Argentina's Big Five to win the Primera División title in the professional era in 1967, allowing them to qualify for the Copa Libertadores. Under the guidance of Osvaldo Zubeldia, they went and won it, completing a hat-trick of continental crowns by winning it again in 1969 and 1970. However, they established a reputation of being violent and unsportsmanlike, with Intercontinental Cup games against Man United and, most notably, AC Milan being marred by their antics. They would time waste, get into fights unnecessarily, lunge in with wild tackles, and appoint former referees who would let the players know what loopholes they could exploit in order to gain the upper hand over their opponents. Following the aforementioned game against Milan though, all the Estudiantes players were arrested, with goalkeeper Alberto Poletti being banned for life after punching Gianni Rivera and kicking Nestor Combin, who himself was bizarrely arrested on the pitch for having avoided military service in Argentina, despite bleeding profusely at the time. In more recent years, they've been a solid but unspectacular club who haven't really won that much, barring a 4th Copa Libertadores triumph in 2009 and 2 Aperturas in 2006 and 2010. However, they have still been a place where many great players have called home at some stage, including Juan Sebastián Verón, Carlos Bilardo, Martín Palermo, Enrique Gaita, and Manuel Pellegrini, the club's all-time record appearance holder and goalscorer. Number 4. Eintracht Frankfurt. Another team who I think have won more than they actually have. Eintracht Frankfurt have only spent 6 seasons outside of the German top flight in their entire history, but outside of regional honours, they don't really have much to show for all their efforts. They were founded in 1911 following a merger of 2 clubs, namely Frankfurter Fußballclub Viktoria von 1899 and Frankfurter Fußballclub Kickers von 1899, taking on the name Eintracht, essentially United in English, in honour of the merger. Over the next 30 years, they became a regional trophy machine, winning 13 of them, but they only ever made it to one German championship final during that time, when they lost to Bayern Munich in 1932, the only time the Bavarians ever won the German league prior to the Bundesliga's 1963 inception. They were going to win 2 Oberliga Süd titles during the 1950s, but one of them, namely in 1959, saw them make it all the way to the final again, and this time they would emerge victorious over Kickers Offenbach. It's the only top flight title they've ever won, but it earned them qualification to the European Cup, when they had another run to the final but were comprehensively beaten 7-3 by Real Madrid, in a game where Alfredo Di Stefano scored 3 and Ferenc Puskás got 4. They were founding members of the Bundesliga in 1963 and were regulars in the top half over the next 3 decades, although following multiple internal conflicts and a fire sale of their key players, they were relegated for the first time in 1996. Upon promotion back to the Bundesliga in 1998, they stunningly survived relegation by virtue of goals scored on the final day of 1998-99 by winning their last game 5-1 to send Nuremberg down at their expense, but they were relegated from the Bundesliga 3 more times between 2001 and 2011, making them a yo-yo club. They shook off that tag following their 2012 promotion, remaining Bundesliga members ever since, and they enjoyed their finest hour in over 6 decades when they beat Rangers on penalties in the 2022 Europa League final to earn qualification to the Champions League for the 2nd time in their history, following 1959-60. Some of their most notable former players include Tony Yeboah, JJ Okocha, Luka Jovic, Chabumkan, and Filip Kostic. Number 5. Espérance Sportive de Tunis. For the final team in this video, we head off to Africa to profile the most successful team in Tunisian football, namely Espérance Sportive de Tunis. They were founded in 1919 as an act of resistance against French colonisation and were named after the coffee house where the members regularly met. Espérance. However, given their status as anti-establishment, they basically lived on the edge for much of their early existence, but after promotion to the top flight of Tunisian football in 1936, they have never looked back. They won their first major honour in 1939 with the Tunisian Cup and their first league title in 1942, and following Tunisian independence from France, they became the dominant force in the country. In the 65 years since, they have won 31 league titles, with 26 coming after 1981 and 16 during the 21st century, including 6 in a row between 2017 and 2022, a run which was halted last season when they came in second behind Étoile du Sahel. On top of that, 15 Tunisian Cups are also in the trophy cabinet, which is a record alongside their Ligue Professionnelle haul, and they are also 4-time African Champions League winners, more than any other team barring Al Ahly, Zamalek and TP Mazembe. 3 of those successes came during the 2010s, including back-to-back crowns in 2018 and 2019, when they defeated African giants Al Ahly and Wydad Casablanca in those respective years. For context, only 2 other Tunisian teams have won the African Champions League, both of them having only won 1 apiece, and Club Africain's tally of 13 league crowns is the closest anyone in Tunisia can come to AS Tunis. Their darkest hour though came in 1971, when following a defeat to CS Sfaxien in the cup final, their supporters invaded the pitch in basically protest against the defeat and proceeded to engage in riots and multiple other acts of violence. Following the incident, the authorities forcibly relegated them to the second tier of Tunisian football, deeming them not safe to compete in the top flight, and the football section of the club was even briefly dissolved. But of course, they came back very quickly, and much stronger than ever. And that just wraps up today's video, looking at 5 of the best clubs whose names begin with the letter E. If you enjoyed this video, as I say, don't forget to check out all the other Football Alphabet episodes that I've done so far, using the playlist link that's somewhere on screen, about maybe here or so. And of course, whilst you're there, of course, please don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and ring the notification bell to be notified whenever I upload a video straight away. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you then.